What if I told you that jazz is still alive and thriving thanks to some incredible musicians who have dedicated their lives to the art? From the classic swing sounds of seasoned musicians to the fresh. Here are 20 old jazz legends who are still alive and with us. 1. George Coleman. George Coleman, aged 89, is among the greatest saxophonists in jazz music. Born in 1935, he grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, a city renowned for its high musical culture. Coleman was exposed to jazz music at an early age and diligently worked on honing his sound. His break came when he became part of Miles Davis's group during the early 1960s. This was a big affair because Davis is one of history's most renowned jazz musicians. With Davis, Coleman contributed to the sound of albums such as 7 Steps to Heaven, wherein his smooth and powerful sax playing was prominent. But Miles Davis was not the only legend that Coleman collaborated with. He also played alongside Herbie Hancock, one of the best pianists in jazz. Hancock's style incorporates various forms of music, and Coleman's flexibility to adapt and compose wonderful melodies made their duets simply unique. Although Coleman toured with so many legends, he was more than a sideman. He had a thriving solo career, releasing albums and becoming one of jazz's top saxophonists. His style, generally called both elegant and very emotive, remains beloved by jazz enthusiasts all over the world. 2. Billy Hart. Billy Hart, age 84 now, has also had a similarly illustrious career. Born in 1940, he grew up in Washington, D.C., where he was immersed in music. He became enamored with the drums at an early age and made a name for himself in the jazz world quickly. Hart's drumming was characterized by intricate rhythms and heavy grooves, and this made him an ideal choice for some of the best jazz musicians. He worked with Wes Montgomery, a guitar virtuoso whose silky but intense playing defined jazz guitar for all time. Working with Montgomery made Hart hone his own distinctive sound, and he became a sought-after drummer. Another jazz legend with whom Hart collaborated was saxophonist Stan Getz, whose popularization of Brazilian bossa nova added new dimensions to jazz. The sensual and lacy sax sound of Getz suited Hart's strong yet bouncy drumming in creating some incredible performances. But Billy Hart's contribution to jazz did not end there. He became an esteemed teacher, imparting his wisdom to young musicians at the best universities and jazz schools. Some of the best jazz drummers in the world today have studied under him, illustrating that his legacy extends beyond mere playing. He's also influencing the future of jazz. Tom Harrell. Tom Harrell, now 78, is one of the most respected jazz trumpeters and composers alive today. Born in 1946, he found an early passion for jazz and soon became known for his lyrical improvisation, i.e., being able to play gorgeous, flowing melodies extemporaneously. Harrell's career got off in the 1960s when he performed with some of the largest jazz ensembles of the time. He performed with Stan Kenton, a renowned bandleader famous for his large, robust sound. After that, he played with Horace Silver, a legendary pianist who set the tone for the sound of hard bop jazz. Silver's music was full of life and soul, and Harrell's trumpet provided a smooth but emotive element to it. Though blessed with enormous talent, Harrell encountered personal hardships. He suffers from schizophrenia, having lived most of his life with the mental disorder. Such an accomplishment only serves to inspire us more, as he utilized music as an expression, playing some of the most emotional and powerful pieces that listeners have ever experienced. Harrell's albums, including Time's Mirror and Colors of a Dream, demonstrate his amazing abilities as a trumpet player as well as a composer. His songs are complicated but simple to listen to, and that's why he is popular among jazz listeners. Bertha Hope. Bertha Hope, who is now 88, is an outstanding jazz pianist, teacher, and composer. She has devoted her life to preserving jazz, not only through playing, but also through teaching up-and-coming musicians. Hope's career in jazz is inextricably linked to the life of her late husband, Elmo Hope, a gifted yet unsung jazz pianist. Elmo was friends with jazz legends Thelonious Monk and Bud Powell, and he had his own distinct, soulful piano sound. When he died in 1967, Bertha set out to preserve his music and story while forging a remarkable career of her own. Throughout the years, she has performed alongside some of the greatest musicians of jazz, combining classical jazz sounds with her own added creativity. She is a masterful player, full of emotion and with an elegance to her playing that has made her one of the greatest jazz pianists still active today. But Bertha Hope is not only a musician, she's also a teacher. She's spent decades educating and guiding young jazz musicians, teaching them about the history and methods of the music. 5. Roscoe Mitchell. Roscoe Mitchell, at 84 years of age, is more than a sax player. He is a visionary. Born in 1940, he made a name for himself with his fearless and innovative style of jazz. While most sax players were content to play melodies, Mitchell played with sound itself, experimenting with new methods to produce music that was new, exciting, and even at times unpredictable. Mitchell is perhaps most famous as a founding member of the Art Ensemble of Chicago, a band that changed jazz music in the 1960s and later. The Art Ensemble was not primarily a band to perform music. It was about performance, narrative, and experimentation. They incorporated jazz with African beats, spoken word, and theater, so their performances were sights to behold. But Mitchell didn't leave it there. Throughout his life, he experimented further, playing a variety of instruments, such as various forms of saxophones, clarinets, and flutes. His capacity to mix avant-garde jazz with classic sounds established him as the foreman of the free jazz revolution, inspiring many musicians. Even in his advanced age, Mitchell is still engaged in music. He teaches, records, and performs, showing that true artists never retire. 6. Julian Priester. 94-year-old Dizzy Reese is among the surviving jazz musicians of the golden age of hard bop. Born in Kingston, Jamaica in 1931, Reese's path to jazz stardom was not smooth. As a child, jazz music was not well supported in Jamaica, but he loved music and played the trumpet at an early age. Set on pursuing his dreams, Reese relocated to London in the 1940s. It was there that he began to make a name for himself, impressing fellow musicians and jazz aficionados alike. His phenomenal talent at the trumpet was noticed by American jazz icon Miles Davis, who urged him to relocate to New York City, the jazz capital. When Reese got to the U.S., he settled right into the jazz community, performing with some of the biggest talents in the industry. His sound found a natural home in the hard bop movement, which was a more intense, soulful form of jazz that evolved during the 1950s. Hard bop blended the energetic intensity of bebop with blues, gospel, and R&B influences, and was a crowd favorite among jazz enthusiasts. Reese's recordings, like Blues in Trinity and Starbright, highlight his strong, expressive trumpet work. His playing has a rich, emotional sound that pulls the audience in, making him the leading trumpet player of his time. Although Reese never gained quite as much notoriety as many of his contemporaries, he is to this day still considered one of the most acclaimed living jazz musicians. His success and influence as a Jamaican-born artist bringing note to America made it possible for other overseas performers to build upon his platform in the years to come. 7. Reggie Workman. Another jazz legend still with us is Reggie Workman, an 87-year-old bassist who has toured with some of the all-time greats of jazz music. A native of Philadelphia in 1937, Workman was raised around music. He began playing bass at an early age and soon became known for his phenomenal ability and profound knowledge of jazz rhythms. Workman was one of the most in-demand bassists in jazz, performing with John Coltrane, one of the most innovative saxophonists in history. It wasn't easy playing with Coltrane. His music was intricate, spiritual, and constantly changing, but Workman's ability and flexibility made him an ideal choice for Coltrane's iconic quartet, which revolutionized jazz forever. Workman also played with Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, a unit that was famous for its hot, high-energy performances. Blakey's band was renowned for incubating young musicians who would later become jazz stars, and Workman's tenure in the unit cemented his position as a member of jazz's elite. But Workman wasn't a sideman alone. He was a leader himself. He worked on many projects and recorded music that expanded the edges of jazz, combining traditional sound with new experimental techniques. Apart from performing, Workman spent much of his time teaching jazz. He was appointed as a professor at the New School for Jazz and Contemporary Music in New York, guiding scores of young artists and sharing what he learned while performing with greats. Eddie Palmieri. At the age of 87, Eddie Palmieri is still one of history's most important Latin jazz musicians. Born in New York City in 1936 to Puerto Rican parents, Palmieri was immersed in Afro-Caribbean rhythms and jazz as a child. He began playing the piano at an early age and was greatly inspired by the dynamism of big band music. Palmieri not only played the music, he transformed it. During the 1960s, he began to combine authentic salsa with injections of jazz, funk, and classical music, and developed what became known as progressive salsa. With this new sound, Latin music was rejuvenated and distinguished Palmieri from fellow musicians of that era. His band La Perfecta brought a brash, cutting-edge sound through the use of trombones instead of trumpets, creating deeper and more dramatic music. This revolutionized Latin jazz and salsa music, so Palmieri could be considered one of the most pioneering artists of the genre. Palmieri's career spans over 6 decades, and he has won multiple Grammy Awards for his groundbreaking music. His albums, such as The Son of Latin Music and Harlem River Drive, are classics that showcase his ability to mix different styles into something completely new. 9. Pat Metheny. Pat Metheny revolutionized jazz guitar. Born in Missouri in 1954, Metheny began playing guitar as a child and was soon a prodigy. By the time he was a teenager, he was already making waves with his phenomenal technique and distinctive sound. Metheny's music defies categorization. He combines jazz, rock, folk, and even electronic music in a style that is both technically complex and extremely emotional. His playing is instantly identifiable. His warm, liquid guitar lines are almost like hearing a voice speaking a story. In the 1970s, Metheny co-founded the Pat Metheny Group, a band that took jazz in new directions. Records such as Bright Size Life and Off Ramp presented a new sound that blended jazz with aspects of rock and world music to make him a popular choice among both jazz aficionados and casual listeners. Metheny has collaborated with some of the industry's largest names, such as Joni Mitchell, David Bowie, and Herbie Hancock. His work with Bowie on This Is Not America was a success, demonstrating that jazz could merge with pop and rock without losing its soul. Throughout his career, Metheny has received more than 20 Grammy Awards, the most of any jazz guitarist in history. His impact on contemporary jazz cannot be denied. Most of today's jazz guitarists name him as their greatest influence. At 70 years young, Metheny continues to tour and record, always expanding the limits of jazz guitar. 10. Dizzy Reese. A 94-year-old Dizzy Reese is one of the last surviving jazzmen from the hard bop's golden age. Reese, born in 1931 in Kingston, Jamaica, had it tough making his way to greatness in jazz. As a kid, jazz did not have many supporters in Jamaica, but Reese was always fond of music and played trumpet from a very young age. Set on pursuing his ambitions, Reese relocated to London during the 1940s. That is where he began making a name for himself, impressing other musicians as well as jazz enthusiasts. His phenomenal trumpet playing caught the eye of American jazz icon Miles Davis, who urged him to relocate to New York City, the epicenter of jazz. When Reese moved to the U.S., he quickly settled into the jazz circuit, gigging with some of the largest stars in the industry. His style easily aligned with the hard bop sound, which was a grittier, soul-based version of jazz that emerged during the 1950s. Hard bop married the up-tempo feel of bebop with blues, gospel, and R&B sensibilities, becoming the jazz world's best-liked sound. Reese's albums, including Blues in Trinity and Star Bright, feature his strong, expressive trumpet work. His sound is rich, emotional, and engaging, making him one of the most talented trumpet players of his time. Although Reese never gained as much popularity as many of his contemporaries, he is still among the most respected jazz musicians living today. His work in jazz, particularly as a Jamaican-born artist finding success in America, paved the way for other foreign artists to come. 11. Marcus Miller. At 65, Marcus Miller is a bass guitar master. He's not only a musician, but also a producer, composer, and multi-instrumentalist who has collaborated with some of the largest names in jazz and R&B. Born in 1959 in New York's Brooklyn, Miller was brought up in a musical household. His father was an organist for their church, and his uncle was a jazz pianist. So when Marcus was young, it was no surprise that he had a love of music. Before he was even a teenager, he was already a sought-after session player, playing bass for top artists. Perhaps one of his greatest claims to glory is having collaborated with jazz giant Miles Davis. Miller has done bass for Davis's renowned record Tutu, and even authored and produced numerous songs therefrom. His bass lines added rich, funky layers to the disc, indicating that jazz is evolving and here to stay. But Miller's talent doesn't end with jazz. He has collaborated with Aretha Franklin, Luther Vandross, and Herbie Hancock, fusing jazz, funk, and R&B like a true master. His solo CDs, such as M2 and Renaissance, demonstrate just how versatile he is. One minute he's playing smooth jazz, and the next he's providing a funky rhythm that gets you on the dance floor. 12. Mavis Staples. Mavis Staples revolutionized the way we experience music. At 85 years of age, Staples continues to perform, her voice stronger than ever. She is a legend in gospel, soul, and jazz music, and her impact on music cannot be measured. Born in 1939 in Chicago, Staples began singing as a child with her family's group, the Staple Singers. They were led by her father, Pop Staples, and the group rose to fame during the 1950s and 1960s with their gospel and soul music. Their songs didn't simply talk about religion, about faith. They also addressed hope, love, and social justice, and so they became a significant component of the civil rights movement. With chart toppers I'll Take You There and Respect Yourself, Mavis Staples became a household name. Her soulful, deep voice was warm and strong and made listeners feel every lyric. She was not only a singer, she was a storyteller, a voice for the voiceless. But Staples didn't rest on her laurels. She collaborated with Prince, Bob Dylan, and even Wilco, demonstrating her voice's versatility to be incorporated into any style, from gospel to rock to jazz. Her solo releases, such as We'll Never Turn Back and If All I Was Black, combine vintage soul with contemporary sounds, demonstrating that music is timeless. Even at age 80, Staples still records and performs music, influencing upcoming generations of performers and listeners alike. 13. Common. At 53, Common is a hip-hop legend, but his music has always been rooted in deep jazz. He's not only a rapper, he's an actor, poet, and activist who uses his music to speak truth to power. Born Lonnie Rashid Lynn Jr. in 1972, Common was raised in Chicago, a city steeped in jazz history. As a young musician, he was influenced by vintage jazz and soul records, which imparted a smooth, sophisticated tone to his music. In contrast to mainstream hip-hop, which tended to emphasize heavy beats and rapid-fire lyrics, Common introduced soft piano chords, brass instruments, and reflective lyrics, creating a distinctive jazz rap sound. His 1994 album, Resurrection, proved to the world that hip-hop could be both intelligent and poetic, and his subsequent work took it even further. Albums such as Like Water for Chocolate and B are rich in jazz samples, live instrumentation, and profound, meaningful narratives. Common has collaborated with such great jazz artists as Robert Glasper and even played with jazz bands, and it all flowed so smoothly between the two styles. His song, The Light, is one of his best-known songs, where he effortlessly combined jazz-infused beats with soulful lyrics. Outside of music, Common has also become well-known in Hollywood, acting in films and even taking home an Academy Award for his co-written song, Glory, for the film Selma 14. Judith Hill. Judith Hill brings jazz to soul and R&B. She's already 41 and has had an illustrious career, singing with the biggest names in music and establishing a sound deeply rooted in jazz. Born in 1984 in Los Angeles, Hill was raised in a musical family. Her mother is a pianist, and her father is a bassist, so she was exposed to music from a young age. Her strong, emotive voice soon made her stand out, and she earned her big break singing with Michael Jackson as a backing vocalist. She was set to tour with Jackson on his This Is It tour before his untimely death in 2009. Nevertheless, that sad event brought her to the forefront as she sang Heal the World during Jackson's memorial service and reached millions of people with her singing. Hill's career expanded, and she collaborated with legends such as Prince, who assisted in producing her album Back in Time. Her music is a fusion of jazz, soul, and funk, making it sound both vintage and contemporary. Tracks such as Cry, Cry, Cry highlight her rich voice and profound, emotional lyrics, demonstrating that she is an artist. Hill also competed on The Voice, earning even more fame for her talent. 15. Melody Gardot. At the ripe age of only 40 years, Melody Gardot is already well entrenched among the most expressive voices in new jazz. Full of passion, emotion, and soul, she stands out above the rest as a talented treasure in today's jazz scene. Gardot's path to music is remarkable. Born in 1985 in New Jersey, she lived a regular life until a devastating accident turned her world around. At age 19, she was struck by a car while on her bicycle, sustaining severe injuries that left her with memory loss and severe light and sound sensitivity. She had to relearn simple things, and music was her means of healing. While recuperating, she taught herself to play the guitar and began writing songs. Her sultry, soft voice and poetic song lyrics soon captured people's attention, and in 2008, her debut album, Worrisome Heart, was released. It was evident right away that Gardot possessed a special gift. Her songs combined jazz with blues and folk, with the results sounding like it came from another time. Her second album, My One and Only Thrill, was a breakthrough hit. Tracks such as Baby I'm a Fool and Who Will Comfort Me highlighted her rich, emotive songwriting and silky, effortless delivery. She has gone on to release gorgeous, jazz-influenced music year after year, building up a loyal following across the globe. 16. Maite Martin. Maite Martin does something just as unique. She infuses jazz with the intense emotion of flamenco. She is 58 years old, and she has been honing her skills for decades, emerging as one of Spain's most acclaimed singers. Born in 1965 in Barcelona, Spain, Martín was attracted to flamenco early in life. Flamenco is an intensely emotional Spanish musical style, rich in intensity and narrative. Martín had a passion for jazz too, and she managed to find a means to integrate the two realms. Her singing is rich, emotive, and expressive. She does not merely perform a song, she embodies it, putting every ounce of emotion into her performance. While more conventional flamenco singers tend to emphasize raw, impassioned singing, Martín mellows out the style by incorporating elements of jazz, which gives her sound both strength and gentleness. One of her most popular albums, Tiempo de Amar, admirably combines these two styles. There are romantic ballads and sentimental melodies on it, with the rhythms of flamenco mellowed out by the smoothness of jazz. She has also collaborated with some of Spain's best jazz musicians, and that proves that flamenco and jazz go hand in hand. 17. Eva Slongo. When most individuals hear the word jazz, they envision saxophones, trumpets, and pianos. But jazz violinists are a precious find, and Eva Slongo is one of the best. Swiss-born Slongo became enamored of the violin when she was little. She learned classical music, but before long, she was introduced to jazz and fell hopelessly in love with its spontaneous nature. Because jazz is far more free than classical music, which adheres to strict pieces, jazz allows musicians to get creative, and that's just what Slongo does. Her sound is influenced by jazz violin greats such as Stefan Grappelli, but she has developed her unique style. She combines gypsy jazz, swing, and contemporary jazz to produce a sound that is both thrilling and refined. Whether she is playing a quick, energetic piece or a gentle, soulful melody, her violin weeps with feeling. Slongo has played at some of the largest jazz festivals in Europe and has worked with numerous famous jazz musicians. She's also an amazing improviser, easily crafting melodies on the fly, ensuring each performance is different. Her skill at blending classical training with the spontaneity of jazz has established her as a unique musician in the modern jazz scene. 18. Giovanni Mirabassi. If you are a fan of rich, emotional, and narrative-based jazz piano, then Giovanni Mirabassi is a name worth discovering. Italy's Mirabassi was born in 1970 and learned early on the importance of the jazz genre. Drawn in by legends Bill Evans and Keith Jarrett, he worked decades perfecting his craft before establishing himself as the leading expressive pianist of his time. What makes Mirabassi special is the way he plays with deep emotion. His music is often described as poetic, filled with beautiful melodies that touch the soul. Unlike some jazz musicians who focus on fast, technical playing, Mirabassi's strength lies in the way he makes every note feel meaningful. One of his most well-known albums, Avanti, is a compilation of solo piano interpretations based on revolutionary songs from across the globe. It's not an album, it's a declaration, interweaving jazz with themes of struggle and hope. This was a bold move, and it earned him praise from critics, who showed that jazz can indeed be political as well as personal. 19. Mar Villaseca. There are some musicians who excel on a single instrument, but Mar Villaseca is the type of musician who can play everything. She is a multi-instrumentalist singer-songwriter, which makes her one of Spain's most versatile jazz musicians. Villaseca was raised in an environment filled with music, and jazz was her passion. She is a fine pianist and possesses a voice that embodies the smooth, emotional qualities of jazz. Drawing on both the greats of traditional jazz and contemporary influences, she has developed a style that combines classic jazz with new, modern sounds. The most striking aspect of Villaseca is that she can play so confidently and beautifully. Whether she's on the piano, singing, or even writing music herself, she infuses what she does with a special energy. Although she is just increasing in popularity, her gift has already gained her recognition among the jazz circle. She has played at Spain's leading jazz clubs and keeps building a style that is creative and deeply influenced by jazz classics. Wynton Marsalis. When discussing living jazz greats, it has to be said that Wynton Marsalis is among them. Marsalis is a trumpet player, a composer, and perhaps the greatest influence on his generation of jazz musicians. He was born in 1961, and while he was young, he took up the trumpet as a kid and mastered the instrument before even hitting his teen years. Marsalis is not only a phenomenal musician, he is also a jazz educator and envoy, spending his life preserving jazz and informing future generations about its significance. He directs the jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra, which is one of the world's finest jazz bands. Under his leadership, the orchestra has performed around the world, propagating the magnificence of jazz to the masses. One of the reasons that Marsalis is unique is that he has such a strong respect for the history of jazz. While other musicians work on contemporary sounds, Marsalis has been dedicated to keeping traditional sounds of jazz alive, from swing to blues. Simultaneously, he has pushed boundaries and experimented with varying sounds, combining jazz with classical music and even writing symphonies that combine the two. Marsalis has received numerous Grammy Awards and even became the first jazz musician to receive the Pulitzer Prize for Music. His influence extends beyond his playing. He has inspired thousands of musicians and continues to create the future of jazz.